house needs painting, grass needs mowing. Where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Hello and welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker.
There you go.
Got it right, man. That's awesome. Hey, if this is our little podcast, I got my beautiful granddaughter, Sarah Beth, here with us, my co-host. And today we're going to be talking about the Bassmaster Classic. And I have a magazine here published by Bass that is a classic report. So we're going to talk about changing lives. You know, I talked about in the past my history. I borrowed $10,000 on a 90-day note to go and fish on the professional circuit, which is kind of a crazy thing to do. I admit that, but hey, it worked. So now I can say it was a brilliant plan. It was quite risky at the time, but really, you know, it's a struggle for most every angler till they get to a certain point. And the Classic was that point for me and a lot of other people. Life-changing opportunities to make a living. So there's nothing, as far as I know, that has been as impactful on professional fishing as a Bassmaster Classic victory. So we're going to talk about the guys that win and the guys that finish second. And it's all about the winner in the Bassmaster Classic. As a matter of fact, we'll go into that first Classic. It's winner take all.
Yep. You know what they say, if you ain't first, you last.
The guy that finished second's the first loser.
There you go.
Oh,
It's the first loser.
No, I don't know about that because I finished second a whole lot of time, but I think I did good because I beat a lot of other guys to get there. So I don't know. But anyway, we're going to talk about the impact of Bassmaster Classic victory for the winners and how many people will know who finished second. So I think that's an interesting little twist. So
Yeah, so small victories. There you go.
small victory.
Small victories.
Okay. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be fun to talk about, and I get to reminisce. And I'm going to talk about the people more than I am going to talk about the victory. So let's go to 1971, Lake Mead, and see who the top two guys are.
All right. That's Masters Classic. A Classic won. In first place, Bobby Murray. And in second place, Tom Mann.
How about that? Two great friends of mine. Bobby Murray was my hero. Tom Mann was my hero. Tom Mann started Mann's Bait Company. Jelly Worm started Humminbird. Tom was an icon, a legend of the sport. He and I were inducted into the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame the same night. I got to share the stage and the podium with Tom. And he was on the year that I did my television show, did my debut. He was my first guest. I love Tom Mann. He was a big part of my life. He was so kind to me and kind of a mentor for me. And so I love Tom Mann. He finished second. Bobby Murray won. Bobby Murray impacted my life with that win. I started following him from the 1971 Bassmaster Classic forward, and I learned Bobby was probably the most consistent guy on the tournament circuit. Bobby Murray caught them when they were deep, shallow, or in between, when the water was clear, when the water was muddy, when the water was cold, when the water was hot. Bobby caught, regardless of the conditions and the situation. Bobby Murray was a fish catching machine. So I kind of idolized his career for his consistency, and what a great person he is. What a great ambassador he is for our sport, as well as Tom was as well. So Tom Mann never won the Classic, but he finished second in the very first one to my buddy Bobby Murray. So there you got some history, the first ever Bassmaster Classic. And let me tell you that these guys didn't even know where they were going. They got on an airplane in Atlanta, Georgia, and they got an envelope from Ray Scott. And once they got to 25,000 feet, they opened it up and they realized where they were going. They told them where they were going, what lake they were going to fish. So you can imagine all these guys, they probably didn't even know where Lake Mead was, the majority of them. I know I wouldn't have known, and which is right out of Las Vegas in Nevada, of all places. So that's where the first classic was, and it was 24 guys and one federation, 24 pros and one federation angler, and it was winner take all. First classic was $10,000.
Wow.
And that $10,000 went only to Bobby Murray. The other guys didn't get anything at all. So it was pretty fascinating that all these guys were out there and competing, and only one guy gets the money.
Wow.
And only one guy gets the title.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what made it the competition, you know, is who's the best.
Well, the winner took all, and I will tell you, in more ways than one. He took the only check, the $10,000 check, but the Bassmaster Classic is truly life-changing opportunity. There is so much notoriety, there's so much prestige in that title, and there's so many marketing opportunities that come along with that prestige that gives you the opportunity to make a living. And for me, it was the event that changed my life and put me in a position to have security. Again, I borrowed $10,000 on a 90-day note to go fishing. Man, I had a lot of pressure on me to pay that bank note. But once I won the Classic, all of that was removed. I wasn't under that same pressure anymore. I had enough opportunity and enough income being a world champion and having that title that it afforded me to take that pressure away. I didn't have that 90-day note I had to make payments on anymore. It went away.
Right.
All right, let's go to Classic number 2.
Yeah, that was in 72. The winners were, well, in first place, Don Butler. In the second place, Ricky Green.
Don Butler from Oklahoma, and my buddy Ricky Green from, I think Ricky was from Arkansas. But
Arkadelphia.
yeah, Arkadelphia, Arkansas. What a great guy, both of those guys. Man alive. Ricky, we had a lot of history together. Now, I didn't have that much interaction with Don Butler. Don Butler was a businessman. He owned a tackle company, and he won the tournament on the spinnerbait as Bobby Murray. So the first two classics, I didn't even think about that until now. The first two classics were won on a spinnerbait, and Don Butler was a small okie bug, so he called it S-O-B, small okie bug. Nice. And he made a lot of money and did a lot of great things with the small okie bug and the S-O-B. So he won the first classic and second classic, and Ricky finished second. Ricky was just one of those guys that could put a spinnerbait anywhere in the world. His accuracy and his ability. When Ricky Green and Tommy Martin became close friends and they traveled together, those two collectively, and I'm not sure whether it was Ricky or Tommy or they did it as a team, they were the two guys that really at least influenced me by watching them and fishing with them, that wanted to make sure they did not waste 1 second of the 8 hours or 10 hours, whatever the tournament length was. They didn't want to waste 1 second. They didn't want to stop and eat lunch. They didn't want to waste any time. They wanted to make so many casts per minute, and they wanted to be real proficient and to get the job done. So those were the two guys that really stand out in my mind that kind of brought the sport into a more athletic, man, let's stand up, let's throw that knee up or that foot up on that trolling motor, and let's see how many casts we can make every minute. So that was Ricky Green and Tommy Martin.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty cool. All right. Classic 3. In first place, we have Rayo Breckenridge. And in second place, we have Bill Dance.
Bill Dance. Now, I don't know much about that guy. Now, Rayo Breckenridge, he was a great guy. Rayo, I had never eaten Mexican food, and I roomed with Jerry Ryan. So Rayo invited us out to dinner one night, so I'm getting to go. This is like my second year on the tournament circuit. I get to go out and eat dinner with the world champion. So I went with Rayo and Jerry and I. Jerry just passed away a couple of weeks ago, and what a great friend of mine was he. And Jerry was a tournament winner. He won Lake Ouachita several years ago. But Jerry had fished in about 7 or 8 Bassmaster Classics, awesome fisherman. But Rayo invited Jerry and I to go to a Mexican restaurant, and they brought the salsa out first. And Jerry and I, neither one had ever eaten Mexican food, but I admitted it. Jerry did not admit that he had never ate. So he gets a spoon, and he thinks that's a soup.
Oh, no.
So he starts eating that. Salsa, and finally he just says, "Rayo, I don't want to offend you, but man, that soup's too hot for me." He said, "Well, Jerry, actually, that salsa, if you'll just hang on a minute, they're going to bring the chips out." So he thought he was eating soup.
Oh, man. And well, look at you now. You still get Mexican every Sunday.
Yeah, that's
So-
right. Now, I eat a lot of salsa now, but I wait on the chips. I just watched Jerry was crying, and this was an authentic Mexican restaurant, so it was a little warm. But we had a good time, and Rayo was so kind, and it was a great time together. And now Bill Dance. Think about that. Bill Dance finished second. He never won a classic, but he finished second in the 3rd classic ever. And that was at Clarks Hill Reservoir, where I won my very first national tournament. So a lot of history there, good times, and 2 awesome guys. And they were wonderful friends, Rayo and Bill. Of course, Bill's everybody's friend. Bill Dance, one of the nicest guys that ever lived. So he and Rayo were tight, but Rayo kept Bill from getting that title.
Well, moving on to classic number 4, in first place, Tommy Martin, and in second place, Roger Moore.
Tommy and Roger. Roger was the first guy to ever wear jumpsuits that were colorful. He'd wear bell-bottom jumpsuits. Roger was from Missouri, and I had the opportunity in 1976 or 7 to go to Cuba. And it was a very controversial deal. Ray didn't like it at all, but there was a lot of political ramifications behind the scene that we won't talk too much about. But nevertheless, Ray didn't want anybody going to Cuba. And Roger was a regular BASS touring pro, and who had finished second in the 74 Classic to Tommy. And Roger went. And I got to know Roger pretty well because we spent a lot of time together on the plane traveling to Cuba, and we chartered an airplane to come back where we could fish a BASS tournament on Lake Kissimmee. So he and I traveled back together. There was only 4 of us on that little charter flight. So Roger and I had a lot of conversation. And later on in life, I had not seen Roger in many years. He was a huge NASCAR fan. So I would go to a race, and there would be Roger. So we got to reminisce a lot. And then I go back to Tommy, who won the Classic. He fished a flex spinnerbait. So there's the first 3 Classics won on spinnerbait. That's pretty interesting, and I never really thought about it until we're sitting here reminiscing. So that's pretty interesting that the first 3 Classics were won on a spinnerbait. A Zorro, a small okie bug, and now a flex. So that was pretty cool. But Tommy, again, I mentioned earlier, Ricky had finished second the year before. Tommy and Ricky traveled together, and they were both just like fish like Kevin Van Dam, very, very fast. And they took advantage of every second of every day. They didn't waste any time. Then they'd put their life jacket on, jump down in that seat, and you better be ready to roll because they were going to take off the minute their butt hit that seat and that key fired that engine. They're ready to roll. So with no wasting time. So Tommy Martin and Ricky were both incredible athletes. Tommy's still doing well, 85 years old, looks like he's 60, in great shape, still fishes, doing well. And Ricky passed away a few years ago. He had a transplant, and his body just rejected it. And so we lost Ricky Green, and what a great fisherman.
All right, moving on to Classic 5. In first place, Jack Haynes, and in second place, Marvin Baker.
Oh, Marvin Baker and Jack Haynes. Jack Haynes was a crop duster. He flew those airplanes, man, and dived down over the trees and under the power lines. He was a daredevil. Jack was a good guy. We started, Jimmy Houston and I collectively started a a program called Focus, Fellowship of Christian Anglers. And so we would have these meetings on Wednesday night and Bible study, and Jack Haynes was always a big part of that. And Jack was a daredevil, buddy. He flew those airplanes on those crop dusters. Those guys are about half crazy. So I always told him he was a nut. And he had a lot of nerve, but he was a super good guy. And Jack's still doing well, I understand. I hadn't talked to him in several years. Would love to. But I always liked Jack. He was always a friendly guy, always laughing, smiling, and a super guy. Marvin Baker was kind of the old man. A lot of people, I think when I met Marvin, he was probably in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. So he got a late start in the game, and he was on the Bill Norman fishing team. And I wanted to be on that team. We wore these white pants with little ends down the side and a red shirt. Man, I wanted to be on that team. Woo Daves was on that team. Dick Busby was on that team. Jimmy Houston was on that team, and Marvin Baker. Man, I begged Bill Norman to let me get on that team, and he said, we'd like to have you. I would like to have you. But the only way you can get on the team is if the rest of the team votes you on. So I talked to Dick Busby. He was all in. Woo Daves was in. Jimmy was in. And I couldn't get a good read on Marvin Baker. And I thought, I might be in trouble. Marvin may not vote for me. Well, before the vote came, I drew Marvin at Clarks Hill Reservoir, the same tournament I fished with Tommy Martin. And I finished third or fourth in that tournament, and Marvin was my partner, and I let him come back to my fish. So he loved me, and as a result, I got the vote, and I got put on the Bill Norman fishing team.
Look at you.
I got to wear white pants with ends down the side.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the outfit, be honest.
Yeah, was I looking good?
All right. Classic number 6. Rick Clyde in first place, and Bo Dowden.
Bo Dowden.
Dowden.
Old Bo. Yep, I love Bo Dowden. And, of course, Clun is a major Hall of Famer, voted by ESPN as the world's greatest angler. What an accomplishment Rick had in winning that classic. There was a story that he got lost in the fog the first day, couldn't find his fishing area, so he just stopped and started throwing a lunker lure and ended up catching the biggest bag in the tournament. Didn't even know where he was. Now, I don't know if that's true. I've never been told by Rick, but that's the story they printed in the magazine, so I'm assuming it must have been true. Bob Cobb wouldn't print anything that wasn't accurate, so I'd say that happened. But that's the old if life hands you a lemon, make lemonade.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a great job of that. Bo Dowden, let me tell you something about Bo. I was fishing a tournament at Guntersville, Alabama, and I was fishing a stretch of the riverbank, and there was a little creek cut, and I would fish my way up to that creek cut, and there was another boat up above me, and I wasn't sure who it was, and I caught a really big fish out of that creek cove, about that little cut, about 7-pounder. And I caught it, and this other boat that was fishing this raft line, he would turn around before he ever got to that cut. And now he saw me catch that big bass, so as we went up and down, I was sure he was going to cut in on me and start fishing that creek cut, because he was getting within about 25 or 30 yards of it anyway. So I thought, well, he'll scoot on down now that he saw me. But he didn't. He didn't. He turned around in the same place and went back and forth. That was his little stretch, and this was my little stretch. And he honored that even though he saw me catch that big fish. So the second day of that tournament, I didn't know who this person was. It was Bo Dowden. So I met Bo for the first time at Guntersville under that set of circumstances. And I said, Bo, did you see me catch that fish? He said, oh, yeah, I saw you catch that giant. I said, you know I caught out of that little creek cut. He said, yeah, I know where you caught it. I know exactly where you caught it. I said, well, I want to thank you for not coming down there and fishing that. That was awful. Honoring my water was awful kind of you to do that. He said, it's only the right thing to do. I'm not going to cut in on you because I saw you catch a fish. I had my turnaround point. You had your turnaround point. point. I respected you, and I expect you to respect me, and that's the way it all worked. I don't care if I see you catch a dozen. If I hadn't been fishing it, I'm not going to follow you and fish your fish. And I thought, that is about the most honorable thing that anybody had ever done for me. But that was Bo Dowden, and he's that kind of a guy. And I had deep respect. And, of course, he went on to win. We'll talk about him up the road in another classic. He went on to win the Bassmaster Classic. So that's Bo Dowden. And, of course, Clun, what can you say about Clun? Because I'll get a chance to talk about him in just a minute. Is that the 76 Classic?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the 76.
Okay, you're going to move to the 77. The only difference is it's going to be a different second place winner.
Yep. Same person. Ricky Clun won again, first place.
Back to back.
Second place, Larry Nixon.
Yep, and that was he won the first one at Guntersville in Alabama, and then he won that one on the Kissimmee chain in Florida. So now you got Clun with back-to-back classic victories, and you got the world's greatest, Larry Nixon, finishing second. Nixon is the Megabucks champion like Clun is the classic champion. Clun's won 5 classics maybe, at least 4, and maybe 5. And Nixon has won like 5 Megabucks. So those guys are the big money champions of all time. So what can you say? Nixon is a guy that I've always respected and admired, and I fished with him I think I drew him as a partner 3 different times. And it's crazy how well we did together, and what a great guy is Larry Nixon. And so I really respect our friendship. And, you sit here and read these classic reports, and it's pretty tough for a guy to finish second because all the money goes to the winner. Even though now they are paying more places down the line, the title of the Bassmaster Classic is life-changing money.
Yeah.
Second is nothing. You get that, whatever that check is, $20,000 or $25,000, and you go home. Man, you win the Bassmaster Classic, you have the chance to make $1 million or more dollars. I mean, it's a big life-changing deal.
You had to be so close and then just see it out.
That hurts.
Yeah, it's got to.
All right, here we go.
Moving on to Classic 8. First place, Bobby Murray, and in second place, Rick Clun.
All right, now read on down there. Who finished 9th in that classic?
Oh, who's that? Your name you made it to the newspaper. Nate Parker.
That was my first ever classic. Bobby Murray won the first classic in 1971, and then in 1978, he won the very first classic I fished in. But look at Clun there. Now, he just won 2 in a row. He won Guntersville, then he won Kissimmee, and now here we are at Ross Barnett in Mississippi, and there's Clun in second place. That's pretty awesome for Clun. I mean, that is pretty awesome for anybody. So hats off to Ricky Clun. What a great fisherman. That's crazy how well he does. The classics were made for Ricky Clun. I mean, he was just a master at it.
All right, moving on to Classic 9. First place, Hank Parker, and in second place, Basil Bacon.
Basil Bacon. How about that? Well, now, Hank, he's not such a good guy, and he's not a pretty man, and he's got lots of hang-ups, but he's got some beautiful grandchildren.
Oh.
Yeah, Hank's got some beautiful grandkids. But Basil was one of those guys. We talk about techniques and methods and grinding. Basil was the guy that threw a great big spinnerbait. He liked to walk a Zara spook, which was a hard bait to fish. Basil was a master at power fishing, and he was a hard worker. And he probably worked as hard as about anybody. Roland Martin was a very hard worker, but I'd say Basil would run him a good run for his money as a hard-working fisherman. And Basil has done real well. He retired several years ago, and he's still doing well as far as I know. I haven't talked to him in about 5 years.
Wow. It's been a while.
All right, now here it comes.
All right, the 80s Classic. First place, Bo Dowden, and second place, Roland Martin.
Bo Dowden. Here's Roland. He's never won the Classic, and here he is second. That was on the St. Lawrence Seaway out of Thousand Islands, New York. Who finished 4th in that tournament, Cheryl?
I see that. You did.
How about that? But let me tell you, Bo, I told you how honorable he was. Just a super duper guy. And He caught that. I was in second place for the first 2 days of that tournament. And the last day, we got a 25-mile-an-hour wind. And I'm going to tell you, Bo Dowden outsmarted me to win that tournament. I had just as good a chance to win. I was at the top of Chippewa Creek on the St. Lawrence Seaway fishing the cut. He was at the second cut. He was down below me. And the last day of that tournament, we got 20-mile-an-hour winds. I had water coming over the front of my boat, and I had bilge pumps on, and it was brutal. Bo stuck in there. Bo hung in there, and he stayed in that rough water. I bailed out. Had I stayed, it could have been a real shootout. He caught a 6'11" or something, a really big fish for that river, and ended up winning the tournament with that big fish. That set it apart. But Bo won that tournament because he was smarter than me and he was tougher than me. He toughed it out. I bailed out, and I learned from that. I feel like I could have won that classic. I had a good shot. After the first day, I was second. After the second day, I was second. Going into the last day, I was in second place, just a few pounds behind Bo, maybe not even a full pound. It was a real shootout. It was neck and neck, and I bailed out because of the rough water, and Bo ended up winning the tournament because he was smarter and tougher.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you go back and change that?
Yes, I would. I'd go back. I'd stick it out. I'd let that water come on, baby. Bring it on. That razor ain't going to sink. Bring it on. I'd be tougher. Yes, I would. And then, of course, who finished second in that one? Roland?
Roland.
Yep. He got beat by how much? It was quite a bit. It wasn't a close classic.
Roland Martin with the weight of 44, 1 ounce, 15 bass, and Bo Dowden also had 15 bass, but his weight was 54.
54, yeah. So it wasn't close at all. Bo won it by a lot. And of course, Roland said that. Roland said, I'd be a lot sicker finishing second had it been closer, but Bo kind of blew this thing away. So
By 10 pounds.
yeah, he deserved that win because he stuck out. I mean, he deserved the win because he handled the wind.
Yeah, I'd say he worked for it. All right, next year in 81, in first place, Stanley Mitchell. In second place, Harold Allen.
Harold Allen and Stanley Mitchell. Stanley was 21 years old, the youngest ever. I won the Classic. When I won, I was the youngest guy to ever win the Classic at 26 years old. So then 2 years later, Stanley Mitchell, who was 21. And I was fishing national bass, and I was fishing down on Lake Murray. I drew Harry Mitchell for a partner. And Harry and I, we fished, and I fished like my hair was on fire that day. And he said, you remind me of my 16-year-old son, who someday you will know his name. His name is Stanley. And one of these days you'll hear that name again, I promise you. He fishes like you do. And he's going to be out here, just give him time. So Harry told me that fishing down on Lake Murray in an American bass tournament, and here 5 years later, he's right. The whole world heard that name. His son, Stanley Mitchell, who is now 21 years old, winning the Bassmaster Classic on the Alabama River.
You know he was proud. I see you down there at number 19.
I didn't do so very good in that one. Harold Allen and I had the same water. Harold finished second, and I yielded to Harold and let him have the only area I was on fish. And so it was just a kind of a bummer deal, but it worked out. Harold ended up second, and Stanley took home all the big dollars.
Wow. All right, in 82, first place, Paul Elias.
Paul
Elias. Second place, Jack Chancellor.
Oh, Petey Wheatstraw, Jack Chancellor. All right, now let me tell you something about Paul. Paul is superstitious beyond belief. He is so nervous. So the last day of the Classic, we had breakfast together. And Paul, who, if he would have drew number 13, he would have panicked and quit. He just scared to death. So we're sitting there at breakfast, and I took his hat, and with a Sharpie, I wrote 13 on the inside of his hat.
Hey.
I did. And when he won the Classic, I told him later, he said, if I'd have lost that Classic and I'd have found that, I'd have killed you. But I love Paul Elias. He and I both worked for Mans at one time, and Paul is one of the nicest guys and the hardest fisherman. He gets so tore up. He's hurt himself more than anybody I know. He beats himself up terribly, but he won that Classic, and everybody thought Jack Chancellor, who finished second, would win that tournament. And it worked out that Paul was able to edge him out, kneeling and reeling, a technique he would, we didn't have crankbaits back in those days that ran past about 12 or 13 feet deep. And Paul was fishing this river ledge that he needed to get that crankbait down about 15 feet. So he was getting down on his knees and sticking that 7-foot rod all the way down under the water to the reel to get that bait as deep as he needed to. And he won that Classic. And that was pretty smart on his part. Way to go, Paul.
Wow. That's awesome. All right, moving on to the next year. First place, Larry Nixon. And second place, Ricky Green.
How about Ricky coming in second again? And that was in Cincinnati, Ohio, on the Ohio River. That was one of those classics, we talk about Jim Bitter dropping a fish back in the water. I got on a little school of fish the second day of that tournament, and I caught one, and I could see that these fish were schooled up, and I knew it wasn't going to last long, and I threw back in, and I caught another one, and I'm just throwing the fish down in the bottom of the boat. I don't have time to put them in the live well. I want to take advantage of this. And I caught the third fish, and the wire on my spinnerbait broke, and about a 3-pound fish fell back in the water, which was a huge fish for that. So I went to pick those 2 fish up out of the floorboard and my press rider in the back, and I can't find the fish. And I said, where are these 2 fish? He said, oh, they jumped up and hit the seat. They went back in the water. So there I had a chance to catch enough fish to win that tournament, and I didn't get anything. I got nothing. So that was a tough tournament for me to have to accept the fact that I lost 3 fish and didn't get nothing. And it was tough. And then, of course, Nixon, he won that thing on a little baby gator tail worm, and that was his expertise. He swimming it through the trees. And Ricky found a little patch of grass, and he was catching them on a spinnerbait. So that was a pretty cool tournament, and the weights were really low. What did Larry have?
Larry had 18.
18 pounds, 3-day total.
Yeah, and Ricky had 17.
Yeah, and that was close because, that was a 3-day total, 18 pounds.
Yeah, 18 pounds. And Larry only has one more bass than Ricky does. Yeah. So, it's just that last bass that made all the difference.
All the difference in the world. All right.
There you are down there in 11th place. You're climbing up that little, that little.
All right, how many pounds did I have? 10?
Well, you had 8.
8 pounds?
Yep.
Is that all?
8 pounds, 12 ounces.
My 3 fish, if I'd have put them in there, wouldn't have won it for me anyway. So now I can relax, calm down. I would have won no matter what. So.
All right, moving on to 84. First place, Rick Clunn. Second place, Greg South.
And who finished third in that one?
Hank Parker.
How about that, man? I was second for the first 2 days, and then Greg South moved in there. He's a medical doctor and a great friend. I was doing the MC for the FLW tour, and Greg watched me walk off the stage, and he said, man, you're in terrible pain, aren't you? I said, man, my back's killing me. So Dr. Greg South lined me up with the surgeon in Richmond, Virginia, that did my back surgery.
Wow.
Fishing. What do you think about that? And then Clunn, what you going to say about Clunn? The one thing he did, he caught his fish there on a shad wrap in a place called Slackwater Harbor, where we were all putting in. Everybody overlooked that particular place. South, Greg fished the back of it with a buzzbait and a spinnerbait, and ended up finishing second. Ricky fished out there on a little underwater island with a shad wrap with a rod that was so limber it'd take forever for him to land the fish, but he didn't lose any fish, and he credited that to not getting in a hurry with those little bitty hooks. It's taking his time. So it was another huge win, and that was Clunn's third Bassmaster Classic, and that's very impressive.
Yeah, he has the highest number of bass and obviously the highest weight, but he beat Greg by 25 pounds.
We didn't want to talk about that. He caught 27 pounds the last day. It just blew us all away.
All right, moving on to the next year. First place, Jack Chancellor. In second place, Tommy Martin.
Now that's funny because Jack Chancellor finished second to Paul Elias on the Alabama River. And now here we go to the Arkansas River, and Jack wins the tournament. He wasn't even on the radar screen for anybody. They thought he'd win the Alabama River. That was his territory. He was an Alabama native, so he wasn't far from Montgomery, and he got a lot of practice in, and he knew that river a little bit, and everybody thought he'd win. And so now he goes to the Arkansas River, and nobody even mentioned his name, and he wins the tournament with a little bitty worm called a do-nothing worm. And finished second.
Tommy Martin.
Tommy, come on, Tommy. He won the 74 class, and then he comes back. And what year was that?
This year is 85.
85. He comes back 11 years later and finishes second.
Yeah.
Good for Tommy.
Yeah, look at you. Number 12.
Number 12. I zeroed the first time. Let me tell you that story. I'll tell it. It's funny. I roomed with Tommy Martin in that tournament, and my wife couldn't go, so I ended up with Tommy, and I roomed together. And so my son Ben called, and Ben thinks I'm the greatest fisherman that ever lived. So I can hear him in the background. Mom, let me talk to Dad. Dad, Mom, is he leading it? Mom, is Dad leading it? Mom, is Dad in first place? Mom, let me talk to Dad. And finally, his mother said, "Here, talk to Ben." I said, "Hey Ben, how you doing?" "Hey Dad, are you leading it? Are you leading it, Dad?" I said, "Ben, I didn't catch a fish today." He said, "I'll see you, Dad."
No, we did not.
I zeroed the first day, and then I came back, and what did I finish, 11?
Let's see. No, you were at 12.
Okay. I zeroed the first day, and then came back and finished 12. But I locked through. There was two sets of locks. That was called the Mirror something pool. And so you had to go through 2 locks. I had one spot to fish, and the spot I wanted to fish when I got there, Jack Chancellor was on it. And he ended up winning the tournament. I had nowhere else to go. I spent all that time going through all those locks, and I got down there, and Jack's on my spot. But it was his spot.
Yeah.
And he beat me there, fair and square. I was as honorable to him as Bo Dowden was to me. I didn't try to infringe on him. I didn't beat him down there the second and the third day. He claimed the spot, so I let him have it. And I ended up catching a pretty big string the next 2 days and coming back from last place to finish 12th. So.
Hey, I mean, that's something, though. And you could have. That speaks volumes about your character, though.
Well, I like that.
You could have.
Go ahead and pat me on the back. I like it. All right. Good.
All right. Next year, 86. First place, Charlie Reed. In second place, Danny Correa. Am I saying that right?
Denny. Yep. He's from Connecticut. Denny Correa. And Charlie Reed. What a great man was he. That was on Lake Chickamauga in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And they had, the Corps of Engineers had taken on a project to destroy all the milfoil and hydrilla in Lake Chickamauga. And Charlie found one little patch of grass in a cove that had not been poisoned. And he stuck with it, used a jerkbait fishing over the top of it, and caught enough fish to win the Bassmaster Classic. And Charlie, in my book, was a champion before he won the tournament. So it was a well-deserved. Charlie was from Oklahoma, and his wife fished the Bass and Jowl tournaments, and she was a very achieved angler as well. But what a great family. And Charlie Reed is in heaven kicking up gold dust right now. What a great Christian, what a great testimony he had. And Charlie has gone on. You know, there's been 3 Bassmaster Classic champions from Oklahoma, and they're all passed on.
Wow.
Don Butler, Charlie Reed, and Ken Cook.
So what I'm hearing is you should probably go and train in Oklahoma.
If you live in Oklahoma, you do not want to win the Classic.
You're doomed. All right, moving on to the next year, in 87. First place, George Cochran. Second place, Rick Clunn.
Clunn came in second again, but now this is the lowest weight in the history of the Bassmaster Classic.
Yeah, at 15 and 5 ounces, 14 bass. And Rick Clunn came in second with 12 pounds and 13 ounces, 6 bass.
On the Ohio River.
Wow.
In Louisville. And 3 months before we fished that classic, the river caught on fire and burned for hours. They had to have PT boats with sprayers to put the river out. That's how polluted that water was. It's amazing that we were able to catch any fish at all out of that polluted river. But George managed to catch 15 pounds for 3 days. That is crazy. But what an awesome fisherman is Cochran. And he's going to come back and win the Classic again in a few years. But we won't talk about that now. Here goes Clun. What are you going to say? Second again. I mean, he's up there in the top 2. This is like his 6th time.
Yeah.
What an amazing feat.
Wow. It's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
It's cool to look through all these too. But hear the stories behind them, because you see these small numbers and you think, well, what in the world's going on? People probably didn't know that it was polluted or
Yeah. 3 months before the Bassmaster Classic in Louisville, Kentucky, the Ohio River catches fire.
Wow.
So that's polluted.
That sounds, that just doesn't even sound real. The river caught on fire.
It did.
All right, moving on to the next year in 88 in first place. Him. Sorry, I'm horrible at pronouncing.
That's all right. Guido Hibden is not an easy name to pronounce.
It is not. And in second place is Woo Daves.
Oh, Woo. Now, that's his home water. Woo was favored to win. Everybody thought that was going to be a slam dunk for Woo. And Guido ended up beating him out. And it was a close call.
Yeah.
And but Guido, what a fisherman was Guido Hibden. And Guido is, I guess, the only father-son. His son Dion won the Classic, and that's on down the road. We won't get to that today, but father-son champion. But the Hibden family are awesome people. Guido went on to be with the Lord about 7 or 8 years ago now. I went to see him just before he died, and I miss him. I sure do. And we lost a great guy when we lost Guido.
We went on to the next year in 89. In first place, Hank Parker. In second place, Jim Bitter.
My buddy. He dropped a bass back in after he measured it. And it slipped out of his hand, hit on the front locker right in front of the windshield, bounced, and he's trying to grab it as it jumps back in the water. Now, I won by 2 ounces. This fish he had was a little bitty fish, but anyway, he said it measured, and I don't doubt if it did, it barely measured, but it was, if it was a 12-inch bass, which it probably was because he said it was, so I believe that. And it slipped out of his hand and jumped back in the water.
I want to show the camera this picture real quick. At the bottom, it says Hank Parker has plenty to celebrate when the scales showed him the winner by 2 ounces.
Well, we might zoom in on that. Let's see what we got there. Was I happy?
I'd say you were happy. That's just, correct me if looking at Jim's viz. He's standing there, his arms by his side. You're over here.
Yeah, that was kind of ugly. And I didn't realize that, and I should have been more sensitive to Jim. I did hug him and told him I'm sorry, but I'm glad I won, which was kind of saying I'm glad you lost. You know, maybe in a way I didn't mean it like that, but I got to tell the story because when we asked for people to send us questions on the podcast, a lot of people wrote in and said, why would you not put the fish on the scales in the 89 Classic? Well, if you go back to 84, I had the chance to win the Super Bass Tournament on Lake Lanier, which would have put me the first angler in history to win the Grand Slam. And I wanted to do that. I was the first angler in history to win both the Classic and Angler of the Year. I won the Classic in 79, and then I came back in 83, the year Nixa won the Classic on the Ohio River, and I won Angler of the Year. So I was the first guy to ever do that. Well, nobody had ever won everything, or qualifying tournament, Bass Angler of the Year, Super Tournament, and the Bassmaster Classic. So I had never won the Super Tournament. So that year, it was on Lake Lanier, right out of Atlanta, and Gary Klein jumped out with a lead. The last day of the tournament, I caught the biggest bag of the tournament. Well, you know how Ray was. Ray was just a promoter, man. He was over the top. He could get the crowd into it. He could get everybody excited. So Ray started hollering, "Hank Parker, Denver, North Carolina, the biggest string of the tournament. Come up here, Hank. Let's hold up these fish." Well, Dewey Kendrick was the weighmaster. And, of course, Ray's emceeing, and I'm the fisherman. So we hold up all these fish, and we walk up and down the stage. And there was a group of photographers over here, so I held up all these fish for these photographers to take pictures to put in Bassmaster Magazine. Then we put them back in the bag. Then we put them in the basket. Then we put them on the scale. And so I took the lead by 10-9. So Ray said, when Gary came up, he said, "Okay, Gary, Hank Parker's taking the lead. You need 10-9 to tie, 10-10 to win." Put them on the scale. He didn't hold them up, didn't waste any time. Dropped the bag straight into the basket, put them on the scales. He beat me 1 ounce.
Wow.
So when we got to the 89 Classic, I knew it was going to be close. I knew it was going to be within an ounce or two. So Ray said, "Let's hold up these fish." I said, "There ain't no way I'm holding them up. Put them on the scale." Boy, he didn't want to do it. He grabbed my head and put it under his arm, and he said, "Look here, man, you hold them fish up, it's going to be a lot more dramatic if you hold those fish up." Well, keep in mind now, the Bassmaster Classic is worth a lot of money. It's life-changing money. So he said, "It's going to be a lot more dramatic." I said, "Ray, it's enough drama for me, just like it is, to put them on the scale." Well, he didn't want to do it. Finally, he said, "All right, Dewey, put them on the scale." I won by 2 ounces. Had I held them fish up and let all them water drops drop off of them and then put them back in that bag, no way I'd have won that. So Jim Bitter would have been the champion. So I wouldn't hold them up. So that's the story behind that, and that's the 89 Bassmaster Classic. So we covered from 1971 to 1989. And we covered all the personalities. Let me tell you something. Jim Bitter is an awesome fisherman. Well achieved. He let the big one get away by dropping the fish back in the water. I'll take it any way you get it. A win is a win. So I got the trophy and the championship, and Jim lost out. I hate that for him. And if it would have been anybody else for me, I'd really hate. Hey, I'm kind of partial to myself.
I'd say.
Probably is like me. So anyway, I can understand the hurt feelings and not having the humor to laugh when I said I put graphite oil on this measuring stick. It was funny to the crowd, but it wasn't too funny to Jim. But what a great guy he is. He and his wife, beautiful wife, Rita, and they are down around Sanford, Florida. He's got a bait tackle shop doing well. So it all worked out. We all have our little place in history, and it is what it is. But that's a Bassmaster Classic from 1971, the first one, Bobby Murray, until 1989, Hank Parker. So there you have it.
There you have it.
Did you learn anything?
I did.
Now you have the history from 1971, the first one, up to the greatest one ever, the 1989. I still think that's my favorite classic of all times.
I wonder why.
I don't know why, but it was all. Hey, we have had so much fun, and our time is up, man. Time flies when you're having fun, and we're having fun.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I think I got a mouse in my pocket. I'm not too sure how much fun Sarah's having over there.
Oh, no, I'm having fun. I'm learning.
Okay. Well, as long as you're having fun, it's all good. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. A little bit of history, a little bit about the personalities, a little bit about behind the scenes, what went on. One thing that I wanted to mention, in 1974, when Tommy Martin won the Classic, the second day of that tournament, he started catching a lot of fish, and some local boat came in there and saw where he was catching the fish, and they started fishing around him. So when he went in that afternoon, he thought, those guys are going to be back tomorrow, and they're going to be on top of my fish. So all night long, he prayed for rain. And it was pouring down rain the last day of that tournament. So when he went back in, there was nobody there. And he had his water all through. So he got his prayers answered. And the rain came, and he ended up winning the Classic. He had no competition from local boats.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I always thought that was an interesting story. So, hey, I hope you're enjoying these stories. We're going to continue on. We'll pick up maybe where we left off. But I hope that you'll hit that like button up there, and then you'll also hit that subscribe button. We want you to join us on YouTube and be a part of this. And we do sincerely appreciate you watching or listening.
Absolutely.
Say goodbye, Sarah Beth.
All right. Goodbye. See you guys next week.
All right. God bless you. I'm Hank Parker with Off the Water with Hank Parker. See you next time.
The house needs painting, grass needs mowing. Where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.